Hello, Jamie's on.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
Oh, Brian, you finally had to do something from home, man.
Yeah, I didn't have to, but I finally broke down and thought I'd try it for once.
All right.
Hi, David.
Well, it looks like Mark got tired of the board meeting already. Oh, there he is.
Okay, so are we just waiting on Dan?
I believe so.
Okay. All right, well, it's 7 o'clock. What do you think? Should we wait another minute or two and then get started, or?
Yeah, I'd say we want maybe
I'll
1
text
minute.
him.
Okay.
I'll send him a text.
I hadn't heard from Dan, so.
Yeah, I haven't either. Close, Jamie. All right, well, we will go ahead and at 7:01, we'll call the meeting to order. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll try this again. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation.
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
All right, thanks, guys. Good.
It was not good. That was not good.
We're still trying. Okay, so that leads into citizens' comments. Do we have any comments for tonight?
I did not receive anything.
Okay. Great, and then Kate, we'll go ahead and do a roll call, please.
Jamie Allen,
Here.
Dan Brule, Melissa Narrett,
Here.
Keith Ravenberg,
Here.
Lindsay Spencer,
Here?
Carrie Trossel,
Here.
Mark Wilmer.
Here.
Dan will be a little late.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. All right, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? All right. We'll move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to start off with some COVID-19 updates. First, we're continuing our process where I am regularly meeting both with our internal leadership team, including all of our principals, central office staff, maintenance, and custodial on a regular basis. In addition, I'm continuing to be involved in my superintendent work group that consists of all the superintendents from St. Louis County, St. Charles County, and Jefferson County. Also on those Zoom meetings, we frequently have representatives from St. Louis County Public Health. We always have representatives from DESE on those as well, and we're sharing resources. We're breaking that down into some different study groups focusing on a variety of things, including, at one point we had end of the year, closing out the end of the year, pick up, drop off procedures. We had groups working on athletics and activities. The main focus is, of course, on re-entry in the fall. Today, I was also on a conference call with Governor Parsons to specifically talk about the budget and implications for next year's budget. In terms of the budget, I've been going through that line item by line item, and at our next board meeting, we can talk about that later today. It will have some adjustments to the budget in preparation for COVID-19. There's going to be, I anticipate, I'm going to recommend some adjustments to the maintenance budget. There's going to be some supplies. There's going to be some additional cleaning materials, cleaning machines. I don't want to go into details, but things of the nature of hand washing stations, hand stands, a variety of things that we are currently either ordering or pursuing to order. I also anticipate some adjustment to the substitute budget, because I believe we'll have, in all likelihood, more people out at various times. So I'd like to adjust that budget. And also, there will also be some furniture ramifications as we look at things such as being able to distance students in the classroom and move away from some of our current flexible seating options. In terms of detailed plans, I wanted to share with the board that all superintendents have agreed that the detailed plans will be held until mid-July. Then at that point, we feel we'll be close enough. Obviously, while everyone is making plans and spending a lot of time on this, we know this is an ongoing and changing situation daily, if not weekly, if not daily. So those things are going to continue to adjust. I will share the sense of what is going on with the community, but in terms of the detailed reentry plan, we are all aiming for mid-July on that. Next week, I'm going to begin doing building walkthroughs with the staff and Ittner Architects, strictly for the recommendations from their professional opinions on how to best prepare for reentry. And a lot of our focus right now is on developing detailed procedures and protocols, which will ultimately result in a re-entry manual that will cover a variety of subjects involving students, staff, visitors, community involvement, and many other subjects as well. Any questions that anyone has in relation to COVID-19 preparation?
So in general, Brian, is the sense, I know we're not talking particularly, but the sense sounds like you're planning for all 800 would be back, or is it, where are we with that? We don't know.
It's difficult to say at this point, Jamie. I can tell you that a lot of other districts, without going into obviously any kind of details, are discussing some form of a rotating or split schedule. But at this point, I with our guys in the class schedule, I'm not really ready to say that we would have to necessarily move to that. My first hope at this point, while we'll continue to study that, would be that we could have school more frequently than perhaps some of our larger peers.
And I guess part of the Ittner walking through is hopefully they can help you with kind of the spatial things and look at that.
Yeah, we're going to rely a lot on obviously Ittner and their expertise, and a lot of it is, we're really there's a lot of local talent here and leadership in terms of relying on our relationship with St. Louis County Public Health and each other in terms of the educational community.
Brian, just in case we get questions, you said mid to late July is when you're planning on those procedures and policies coming out?
Mid-July.
Mid-July. Okay. Just in case somebody asks, I want to know when to tell them.
Absolutely.
And at this point, our calendar is going to stay the same for next year, or that we don't know yet either?
At this point, I'm not ready to recommend any change to our current calendar.
Okay.
Anything else on COVID-19? All right, Sam, could you come on and do our communications update, please?
Sam, have we sent anything out about the food service throughout the summer yet? Okay.
Do you know, is there, back to Brian's point, Sam, can we get something, or will you have something up just helping to frame up, even to Melissa's point, on the website, or communicate out that, hey, we know everyone's anxious about the upcoming year, but FYI, we're targeting July 15th. I think anything we can do through the different channels would be good.
And then
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if there are any other updates that come out, I'm assuming you'll still be utilizing Parent Square throughout the summer, so we can let parents know they can use the website or check it. But if there's something major that's coming up that we want all of our parents to know about, they can find that through Parent Square as well. Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Dave Gill coming on to give us our project update. Hey, Dave, you're muted. Muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. In our new building, the addition, our new building addition, the masonry and structural steel work is continuing every day, and it's making great progress. In the lower level, the high school, the fiber optic cable by charter was actually being installed today, which has been on our schedule for a long time. In the north building, the lower level framing and finishes are being installed. We should be complete in the north building by the end of May. All abatement is now complete in the middle school, so all rooms are now being remodeled. We're replacing the mechanical equipment in the high school, and abatement continues in the high school along with new finishes. As we get rooms packed up and moved, we move in and do abatement and then remodeling. Change orders to date are up to number 10, with a current project sum of $18,823,000. And a completion to date is $10,833,000. Our current schedule is dependent on asbestos abatement in the high school, which is going remarkably well. And as I mentioned, that's followed by selective demolition and remodeling. Overall schedule, we had a meeting today, and the project as a whole is scheduled to be complete at the end of August, with the exception of the small gym, which may linger into September, and possibly some site work, which also might not be complete in August. But depending on the weather, we may be able to accelerate that faster than we think at this point.
I'll just jump in. We had a very productive scheduling meeting today with Ittner, K&S, nailing down a lot of the details to the schedule, and we felt good and optimistic coming out of that. They've made up some time during this last couple months, and we're of course going to push them on a weekly basis to continue to make up time. We continue to monitor staffing on the site on a daily basis, and we have been well staffed. We're still luckily not being significantly impacted by COVID-19. Our only concern is on some international deliveries. They're showing that they're still on time. We have some, for instance, we have some tile coming from China that's due in July. It's showing that it's on time, but of course it has to clear customs and everything else. So that one's on our radar, but we're continuing to monitor that.
I guess one of the questions I have is, if the small gym is not going to be done, are we going to be ahead of the ball game this year and with practices have locations in place for volleyball and whatever sports are going to be affected, so we're not trying to figure that all out at the last minute? Because that was a big issue last year. So since we know that that's a potential to not be done, is that something that we can make sure is on the radar for athletic department?
Yeah, excellent point, Carrie. I'll talk to Dr. Ayotte first thing in the morning, and he's luckily he's already got all those associations that he could reach out and preemptively plan. Obviously, we will have the main gym, so we'll be better off than we were last year. But yeah, we'll still want to have a backup plan.
And dance will be at McGrath this year, so I don't know if they want to go to Mark Twain or what, but always zigzags every year. So
okay.
I guess the other thing is it just the delays from like things that we're waiting on? Because at the last meeting, we really thought that this was going to be all done, give or take just some touch-ups by the end of August. So now that we're going into September, what caused that? And do we see any concerns about it going later than September?
Well, actually, if the board recalls, this is not a change. Actually, we've now, our prediction for the past couple months was just strictly on the small gym, and like Dave said, possibly some landscaping or a little bit of stone work out front of the high school, and actually some other pieces have moved up. The last time I talked to the board, I had mentioned the small gym, the outside landscaping, and also the elevators. At this point now, the elevators have significantly moved up, and they are showing a August completion date. Before, those were also going into September.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for David?
But these delays are already accounted for in the financials.
In terms of what, if they're going to ultimately ask for additional days on the back end?
Yeah, in terms of if we got additional days, there's man hours associated with those days, right? And so we were showing a number in the budget. My question is that additional time and all of that already in the financials, or we have not accounted for that?
Well, we haven't accounted for it, and that's always a negotiation at the end of these products, because, you know, we have a $1,000 a day penalty that's built in any day that they go over, you know, that August, I believe, 14th date. So that would obviously go against any of their claims for time and material.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Brian, that's exactly my point. I'm not talking on the bad, I'm talking on the too good, right? Really, because I'd expect on the too good, we had August 14th. My question is, if I go look at the 18.8 number, I think what I'm hearing is none of that negotiation's in there. That's just as if we were delivering 8/14. I think is what I'm hearing. What you're telling me then is, as we get into that and as we start passing 8/14, hopefully we're not at risk of that number ballooning. Rather, we should be seeing some traction against that.
No, I don't think it. I definitely wouldn't characterize it as ballooning, but it is always, you know, this is quite typical of the projects I've been involved in. If a component of it goes over, it becomes a negotiation that will involve, you know, hopefully not the attorney, but at least myself, Itner, and KNS to come to an agreement, and obviously the board would be involved in that. But no, I do not anticipate a ballooning cost.
But I guess then I'm going to come back. What I would anticipate is we should be coming down then from an 18.8 potentially, right? If 18.8 was the number to deliver on 8/14, and we're now into September 30th, my expectation, right, is that we, through those negotiations, I mean, I'd expect to see something off of that. I mean, and I guess the other point is, we already know, we're sitting now, we know it's not going to be delivered on 8/14. What precludes us from starting having some conversations around this, just so that we're not then getting into all of this at the, you know, in the September timeframe?
Well, a couple points to this. One is, yes, we are already having conversations about this. There's kind of that back and forth between myself and the president of KNS already up to this point. Now, the issue that you do legitimately get into when you start talking about, you know, their penalties for going over versus additional days is, you know, were there legitimate delays that were not KNS's fault? And so you do look back at the change orders that were, you know, prescribed by the owner. You look at the asbestos issues, and, you know, so there are legitimate reasons why, you know, a construction company could have a legitimate claim for some reasonable days of compensation. Anything else for David? No? Okay. Let's continue then. Not much in terms of a Proposition E update. We did not have additional questions that came in since the virtual town hall meeting last night. Just like to thank Jamie, Lindsay, and Keith for participating in that. We actually, at points during that meeting, I was told later, had over 90 community members watching that virtual town hall. So I think that's wonderful, and I think we got a lot of good information out. So did anyone have any questions or comments regarding Prop E?
I just have a comment. I thought all of you did a wonderful job. Brian, Jamie, Lindsay, Keith, So thank you for representing the board.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right. At this point, I'd like to bring on Steve Chodas, our interim CFO. Steve has some budget adjustments that he'd like to run by the board and get approval for.
Hello. I need to find that list. Kate, where can I find the list?
I can share it. I've got it up. Maybe. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Just quickly going down the list. There were no revisions to revenue, and any revisions to expenditures were offset. Increases were offset by reductions elsewhere. Those adjustments for expenditures include salaries that were decreased to cover the cost of the high school furniture and equipment, a total of $745,000. Accounting services were increased by $45,000 to cover the cost of LDR services for my services. Budgets that were reduced to cover the cost for the increase in accounting services included admin, professional meetings, central office, other fees, contracted services, and deductible reimbursement. Tech equipment was increased by almost $40,000 to cover the cost of additional equipment necessary to better secure the district's data. As I'm sure you're aware, we had a crypto locker virus, and this is to ensure that it does not happen again in the future. Budgets that were reduced to cover these costs include the phase equipment for a variety of different areas and a small amount from athletic equipment repair. The high school, middle school alterations and additions were decreased to cover the cost of the asbestos projects in the amount of $42,000. Other budget adjustments include moving from building repairs and alterations to MC alterations and additions, from telephone to trash hauling, from copier maintenance to another copier maintenance. And from the high school driver's ed supplies to the high school, middle school industrial arts supplies, small ticket items. The only thing that I'd like to mention at this time, in addition to this, is that we've received additional invoicing for the asbestos project. So there will be at least one more adjustment subsequent to that, but in this year. And I'd be glad to answer any questions the board might have.
So for the high school year, were we planning on using money from the capital funds to pay for that, and we no longer need to pull that money out?
Which one are you referring to?
So the very first one where it says salaries were decreased to cover the cost of high school furniture and equipment. So does that mean that we have saved $745,000 from our capital projects fund to not have to pay for that? Or because I thought that was we would be paying for that through that fund.
Well, right now, when I looked at the budget to see where we might be over, the salaries kind of stood out to me. I'm still monitoring it as we proceed throughout the year, which is, just another month or two. And, this is a one-time expenditure for the high school furniture and equipment. So, that money will obviously go back to salaries next year.
Is that just, do we know, were these open positions that we didn't fill, or did we just miss the mark in our, obviously we're talking support staff, et cetera, right? I'm just curious, it's a fairly large amount.
Right. And I did not go into that detail. I just
Okay.
looked at where things stood at the time I needed the money and said, okay, I think we can pull from here. I cannot say for sure that we will not need to move money back to that at some point.
I guess that's where I'm going, right? If we're, particularly in the world we're in, if there's a function of unfilled positions, that's a fairly big chunk of change compared to our total budget. I guess that's just something we should keep our eye on when we're looking at next year's.
Something to consider.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, are you going to be developing our budget for next year? Or is that going to be the new CFO?
Well, we need to approve it prior to year end. So I will be developing one along with Brian. I've spent today kind of putting together a list of budget assumptions. And I know Brian is anticipating on getting that to the board as quickly as we can.
So one of the things that I'd like you to look at, I know historically we have padded some places in our budget. This tells me that we've padded more than I even realized, which is fine. It's always okay to like pad places, because what that tells you is you can, where you have some flexibility. But I'd really challenge you to try and go for accuracy in this budget, because anything we can do to monitor the current situation closer, I think is going to help us a great deal.
Yes, sir.
I guess the other question, number 4, do we know what alterations and additions were decreased in the high school, middle school, cover the asbestos projects?
I do not. Again, it was just looking at the budget and seeing where the system said there might be money available.
Okay. And then I guess the high school driver's ed supplies, is this because we're not going to, I guess, do the driver's ed this summer? Or is this because the program's been changed, I guess, to an online summer school program versus the way it was in the curriculum last year?
Carrie, that one was honestly, that's really just because the $800 was sitting in there and they hadn't used it this year by the end of the program. So
Okay.
no, it does not indicate any future plans. That would have been, hypothetically in next year's budget that we would have been looking at that most likely.
Okay.
All right, if there are no further questions, we would like to have approval of those budget adjustments.
I move that we approve the budget adjustments as outlined.
Second.
And discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we wanted to, and maybe Lindsay, you could kick off this conversation for us, if you don't mind. We wanted to go back to discussing our board committees and kind of start cementing some plans in terms of, we'd already talked about who would be on what, but also I believe we wanted to talk about who further would we like to have on those committees, and also when would we like to begin meeting with committees?
Yes, that's exactly what we need to talk about. So just to go back, I think it was late February, early March that we decided on 3 subcommittees that would be, we would have board members on each of these. Just as a reminder, Jamie and I are going to be on a finance and facilities committee. Melissa, Keith, and Mark are on the curriculum committee. And Carrie and Chris Perkins, when he joins the board, will be on the communications committee. And just as Brian said, we thought we could talk a little bit tonight about who else should be included in that. It's so that our, the reason to have these committees is so that as a board, we have some more in-depth knowledge on different areas of the district, and whoever's on that committee can share that with the rest of the board, and together it will be a much more educated and well-rounded when we're making a lot of our decisions as well. Jamie and I, I'll start with the finance and facilities, since that's the one that I'm on. Jamie and I have had a couple of conversations about who we would want to include in that. Andrew Hartnett for our facilities would be a great person to have. Brian as well. We are thinking of having our first our first meeting maybe late June, see what happens with Prop E. Either way, we're going to want to get together and talk about facilities and finances. Hopefully, if it passes, we're going to be planning for what the next steps are, and if not, what we need to be looking at for facilities more long term. So I don't know if there's a lot of reason to get the curriculum and communications groups. You can decide how soon you want to get together. It could be waiting until early next year, but it would be great to just have a conversation about other folks we want to include within these groups.
Lindsay, the only other thing I'll add is that the committee, that subcommittee we have we aren't representing, so assuming Prop E passes, there would be a separate group that would be responsible for all that detail. This is a committee that's part of an ongoing committee as part of the board that would function and obviously help give some input, but we don't envision that there would be a separate group. Melissa, we had talked of you having interest in sitting in on the detailed planning for the elementary school. So I think that's fine. I guess that's just a key point there, is this would be a group this subcommittee would be focused on the longer term and not the detailed design associated with Prop E.
Yeah, correct. Thank you for clarifying that.
But Lindsay and I chatted, part of that finance committee would be, hey, we need to continuously revisit our 10-year plan. When we come out of Prop E, we should be thinking through what that looks like. To the extent it passes, I would envision with us, Andrew, Brian, reaching out to real estate professionals as an example to help think through beyond, I'm thinking ECC and things like that, just to help with that process. But, the other thing is just quite honestly, like the conversation we just had, right? We should be able to speak to, I would envision the budget or budget adjustments would come through the subcommittee so that the fellow board members could rely on us to give a little more detail around why do we have, $750,000 extra? We should be able to speak to that.
I agree.
So Brian, do you have any input on other members that should be, for example, on the curriculum committee? Are there certain principals or educators that you would recommend that would be valuable for helping us? What do you think we should have?
Alex and Vicky, definitely. Beyond that, then we could have a further conversation. All of the principals are obviously experts in their building, in their level of curriculum. So, we could perhaps have Alex and Vicky and the board members, and of course myself, as the ongoing group, and then we could always invite in guests. If we're talking high school course offerings, obviously, Dr. Johnson to join us for one or multiple meetings depending on the need.
Could we also have find out what the, who's rewriting curriculum and whatever subjects, and then maybe they can come in and present on what they're doing or, what they want to add or whatever, because I know we do different parts of the curriculum at different times of the year and different years.
Yeah, Kara, that's a great idea. For instance, we're currently doing completing ELA here at the end of the year, so that would be a great opportunity. For instance, if we had a summer meeting, we could have someone from that ELA group come in and do an overview of the work that they completed.
Yeah, I mean, the questions that come to mind for me on the curriculum side is similar to finance. What is your 10-year plan? What are the little goals that we want to have in place? Is it building specific? Is it district specific? Like where do we want to go, and what are our options when we talk about flexibility? I mean, from a COVID perspective, what is the impact going to be, and what are we going to do to try and mitigate those things? Those are questions that sort of just pop in my head immediately. I mean, I think that's an ongoing conversation that's going to be really, really helpful, I think, for board members as well. And I can't wait to hear what Keith and Melissa bring to the table too with their experience. I think we should probably get together earlier rather than later, post the election.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It seems like if we do something with this, we ought to have a meeting before too long and start to have some plan of attack as to what we're trying to accomplish. And I would think that places like the three of us on the board plus Alex and Vicky and Brian, and so I'm open to coming up with some meeting time sometime in June, maybe.
Yeah, I'm up for whatever.
Well, Lindsay, what do you think about if I were to send out emails to the three groups and just kind of start nailing down some potential dates for those three teams and get input from the committee members?
Yeah, I think that's great.
For the communications, I can reach out to the different PTO presidents and see if there's a parent that they want to represent, or we can ask them. As far as communication, Brian, is there someone in each building that kind of does communication for their buildings that we can reach out to as well? Or besides Sam being the district communicator, I didn't know if there was someone that is in each building that has to go back and communicate.
Yeah, I'll have a follow-up conversation with Sam this week. Yeah, we do tend to rely on, of course, the administration, but then we also we do have the secretaries doing a lot of communication work in the individual buildings. So I think it just becomes a question of who would best be on that committee beyond just Sam and the board members.
You might even consider some of the counselors, because I know when we're trying to figure out what are good programs or speakers, the counselors already have a group that they've put together and with a couple parents in each grade level that meet, I think, once a quarter to talk about topics that parents say are successful or that they need information on or whatever. So that's another group.
Okay. Lindsay, anything else on that topic?
No, I don't think so. It's great if you can organize those. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely. That's going to be good work. Next up, we have work calendars. These are just our calendars for our various staff. You have your For instance, your 10.5-month employees, your 12-month employees, your different groups. And this, we're just looking, no significant changes to this, just to reflect the dates and the expected work days for those groups.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve those calendars, those work calendars.
I move that we approve the work calendars as detailed.
Second.
Discussion? Right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, those are approved.
Thank you. Next, we have Vicki Reese to present the NTB memo of agreement.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. I know Kate uploaded a copy of the advisory team NTB memorandum of agreement for the 2022 school years. And I'm asking you as a board to ratify the great work that was accomplished by the group, the two subgroups, which consist of teachers, administrators, and you as the board. The two subcommittees, as you know, were the Educational Climate and Policy Committee. The work that they completed were to come up with some strategies to increase diversity in hiring, to ensure health and safety during the working conditions in our school, and to recommend some changes to the bereavement policy to ensure supporting the emotional needs for our employees, and the work of the Finance Committee. And the work there, you guys addressed extra duty pay, professional development leaders and their roles, and the overall salaries to reflect education, years of service, and all which was equitable and competitive. So thank you so much for your commitment to the Brentwood School District, our facilities, our staff, and our community as a whole. And before you ratify these, do you have any questions?
Vicki, this is a process check or question. So we're ratifying this now. As Kelly, she's gone back to the teachers groups, and what's happened with that?
Yes, she took NEA, so Kelly took it back to NEA and they approved it.
Okay.
And Krista Jones took it to the MSTA group and they approved it as well.
Okay. So this is the last step here.
Yes, that's correct. And then in next year, Brian meets with Krista and Kelly and we go through, and myself, and we go through and just make sure that we are in compliance on all of the solutions that we set up this year.
Including, I think we called out as part of the finance subcommittee that we would reconvene next year, correct?
Yes, that group will continue their work. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Great questions. Any others?
If we can have a motion to approve the NTB memorandum of agreement.
I move that we ratify the NTB memo of agreement for 2020 through 2022 as detailed.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, that is ratified, Vicki.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Sorry, Vicki, question. I'm horrible. Did we lose her?
No, I'm here.
Does the salary schedule and all that as part of that, when does that get published? What does that look like?
It's posted on the G Drive, and since that G Drive has been compromised, I've uploaded all of the archive documents from 1994 till the present date in a Google Doc, and I will share it with all staff.
Okay.
Okay?
Sitting in your briefcase on your front seat of your car, right?
Yes, for sure. and a couple of external hard drives.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vicki. Next up, we have, this is a recommended resolution from MSBA in relation to COVID-19. And, you know, the point of this resolution is that it gives us some ability that if we have any current policies or procedures that conflict with emergency COVID-19, you know, statutes or legislation, whether at the state or the federal level, that this gives us some protection under that. It does clearly state, and this would be my role, that if we see any examples of this, I would bring that to the board, and then obviously we would make any necessary changes. I can tell you I've went through all of our applicable policies and procedures, and at this point I have not seen any direct conflicts with legislation or any statutory changes that have came out. But this specifically talks about things like the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act. We do not have any policies that conflict with that, but that is an example of the type of thing that if we did have that, and perhaps it, you know, takes us a few weeks to get to our next meeting to make any of those changes, this you know, gives us some basically you know, a little leeway because these things can change very quickly.
Brian, do we need to put an end date on this if we pass it, or how do we make sure that we stop the emergency policy that we're essentially putting in place?
I think that's a fair point, Mark, and perhaps we should you know, pick a date, and then we could put that on the calendar, and we could always readopt the resolution depending on obviously the status of COVID-19.
Yeah, I kind of like that. If we have a date that we just sort of say it's suspended up until this date, and then it just has to come back to the board to suspend it again. I think that's good. That way it is only going to be set for a certain amount of time.
Do you have a proposed date in mind, Mark?
I do not have a proposed date. I was just what would you feel comfortable with?
I would say it would be helpful to have it in place until the end of the calendar year.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So we could say this is in place until we could just say December of 2020.
So we have the option not to adopt this, I guess, as I've read this like 4 times.
Yeah, well, it's not required. It's just recommended by MSBA. I suppose the hypothetical, you know, the concern would be that you get caught in a situation. You are, you know, your policies are not in line with a new legal requirement.
But I mean, to that point, even we could set a date, but if I look at the 5th point, it says it's either when the governor says, right, the state of emergency ends, that sounds like at that point this is nullified, right? Or at any point in time when we just revoke the resolution.
That is true.
Okay.
But to Mark's point, if we wanted to, you know, we can, and maybe it's not so much, maybe at this point we adopt the resolution as a board, and Kate can make a note that if we have not discussed it or if it has not been dismissed, that, you know, that would be our reminder that we would revisit that in December of the next school year.
I guess that's where I was going with it, is just put a reminder in there to bring it up as an agenda item. But either way, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I like that strategy.
Okay, so why don't we make a motion to approve the resolution with the date we review it in December?
I move that we approve the MSBA COVID-19 resolution.
Second.
Any discussion?
So Brian, we call attention to the FMLA, right? And is there anything unique about this? The fact that it's called there that we are missing or that we should be doing?
What's the question, Jamie? Is there anything unique between EFMLA and FMLA?
No. Just to the whole first point, right? The fact we're calling attention to it, right? And it's implement the new federal, right, leave expansion, emergency paid sick leave act as enacted in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. I have no idea what all is in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. My question is, are we aware of what's in there, and are we already doing that, or is there something we need to do by quote unquote implementing this?
No, we're already familiar with it, and even Redkey in HR. But it is there are some different provisions in it that did change, both how you can qualify for FMLA and a couple of, but we are aware of those.
I guess that's my point, right? Is I just adopted that, and I'm assuming that you and Stephen know all the particulars, right? Because by virtue of us, if we do approve this, by virtue of us doing that, inherently, right, I'm expecting you all to know exactly what that means, so that if something comes up, God forbid, right, we're able to handle accordingly. Okay.
Yeah, it became effective April 1.
Okay.
And we are very familiar with it. We'll be in compliance with it.
Okay.
Jamie, that was partially why I wanted to make sure we had a defined end date, and we just forced our hand to suspend the policies again, because I think there is a liability concern, right? We're essentially approving a memo that says, hey, because of COVID, we should be able to do something that our policy might direct us currently not to do, which I think is completely something we should do. But all I worry about is the governor not ending the state of emergency, and we accidentally break something, or we have the excuse to break something, or anyway, we just need to make sure we review it. I think in December is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Anything else for discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? That is approved.
Excellent. So that ends the superintendent report. The only thing going into dates that I would ask the board to take a look at, we do have an upcoming policy meeting. That is the same night as the election. We do not currently have policies, but at this point, I would like us to consider having another meeting that week. And we would like to bring the budget to the board at that point, which would allow some time, and then so that obviously I wouldn't expect the board to see the budget and to approve it at that at our board business meeting.
Okay. Do we want to stick with the June 2nd date if we're going to have a meeting that week, or do we want to have it on Monday instead of the election day? Does anyone feel strongly one way or another?
I do not feel strongly one way or another.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll stick with the 2nd at this point then.
Brian, just as a point of clarification, is the budget strictly the COVID adjustments, or this will be our official budget for the next year?
Official budget.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, is there a SSD report, Melissa?
No, there's not. Our next meeting is June 1.
Okay. And keep the MSBA delegate report.
Yeah, there's two things shown in the agenda. The normal mid-year meeting, which has been renamed to be the virtual Igniting Great Ideas Summit. I can't remember what it was, but I don't know if anybody else has attended any of those. They're kind of like miniature versions of the fall conference, that there's these breakout sessions and so forth. And because it's all virtual this year, if somebody's inclined to sign up, you avoid having to drive down to the Lake of the Ozarks where it's always been, although they're moving those things now. So that's something to think about. Part of that is the delegate assembly, and I opened this stuff up and was looking at it for the first time today, and I understand that it's when the group elects the officers for the coming year, and apparently there's 2 contested elections, which is very unusual. I don't know why that is. I have been the delegate, and I can do that unless somebody else is yearning to do that, or even not quite yearning to do it. Does anybody have an interest in becoming that delegate and doing that for a while?
I have an interest in attending the virtual meeting. I don't know if I have an interest in becoming the delegate. So Kate, do I just need to, if my calendar, if I can work that, do I just need to let you know, or how does that work?
Yes, please. If anybody would like to attend the virtual Igniting Great Ideas meeting, let me know and I can get you registered. And also, as part of that there's a delegate assembly later in the afternoon, like 2:30 to 4 or whatever. And that, okay, it's $99 to go to the summit, but going to the delegate assembly is free. And in addition to the officers that are going to be elected, there's also some bylaw changes that they're going to review. So anyway, so if anybody wants to go to the summit, let me know and I can get you registered. And also somebody has to, if you want to go to the delegate assembly, somebody has to register for that too, although that part's free.
Well, I'll plan on registering to do the delegate again. But yeah, I think it's worth signing up for the other stuff. There is a charge for that. I opened up, you can find it on their website, the agenda, and maybe it's worth taking a look at to decide whether it looks like it's worth attending or not. But I think it probably is. So there's that, and then the next item that is shown in our agenda is the regular fall conference is September 24 to 27. And it's going to be in Kansas City. Now, for the past, I don't know how many years, it's been down at the Lake of the Ozarks. I think when I was first on the board, they've been in the practice where they bounce it back and forth between Kansas City and St. Louis, maybe Springfield as well. I don't know, but it looks like, I kind of think maybe the concept of Margaritaville kicked us out of there. So they're going to have it in Kansas City this year. I'm going to guess next year probably going to be in St. Louis, but I don't know. So that's the change, and it looks like they're planning on doing that, having things such that it can be done with people attending as in the past. So I think that's it for MSBA for now.
Okay.
Oh, may I just say on the annual conference, if we could start registering on June 1st, if anybody thinks they would like to go to that, let me know.
Okay. Keith, thank you for continuing to be our delegate. All right, anything else that we need here for upcoming events? Just let you know, Kate, about the summit and the conference.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have reached the end of our open session and we need a motion to adjourn and move into the closed session for reasons stated in our agenda.
I move that we adjourn and move into closed session for reasons stated in the agenda.
Second.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Jamie Allen,
Yes.
Dan Boulay,
Yes.
Melissa Nair,
Yes.
Keith Ravenberg,
Yes.
Lindsay Spencer,
Yes.
Carrie Trostel,
Yes.
Mark Wilmer.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.